continuing to do that because that's what kind of government we want to see, and that's what we're going to do for the next 4 years.
Larry and Autumn happened.
There were 2 seats in play on Meadville City Council. 4 candidates, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans were on the ballot. Let's take a look at those numbers. Both seats will go to the Democrats, Autumn Vogel and Larry McKnight.
Like, that was a win for so many small people. And I don't say small because we're not important, but I say small because we have systems and people in place that make us feel not important.
The way that it caught fire with the people here, the people that possibly didn't think that they mattered as much to, or didn't pay attention to these types of elections here in town.
What those guys did and the crew that was surrounding them, you could tell something big was about to happen.
A lot of people told us that we were making a mistake. I think his words were, it's a textbook version of how not to run a campaign.
It was what politics should be, and that's let's look at everybody in this community.
And it made people feel like it was possible to have power just as an ordinary person.
Larry and Autumn were something special. They were the not normal here in Meadville. They were different. They provided hope, freshness, a little youth, a little wisdom that came from somewhere other than the status quo. So they became more or less like Superman and Superwoman for me and a lot of other people.
Meadville isn't special really in any way, like it's special to me, it's where I live, but things here are, I think, just as like bad as they are anywhere else, and they're just as good as they are anywhere else.
Meadville is like this beautiful, connected, small town that feels like it's kind of like 10 years behind everything else, for better, for worse. You know, it's like we don't have things like Uber really, we have like one Uber.
When I went to college, I kind of decided, you know, I like the small town atmosphere of Western Pennsylvania. I like kind of the humility of the area. It's an area that doesn't try to be something it's not.
So I think that having come from an urban environment, when you walk down the street, you have an awareness that you're never going to see any of those people again. But it does feel really nice to be like a regular somewhere. Coming in and seeing the bartender that I always see and saying, hey, how's this? How are your kids? And it makes you feel present.
I feel like Meadville has a very small town mentality, and I think that that's a really good thing in some ways. I've seen a lot of tragedy here in Meadville and a lot of different things, and I've seen a lot of people in this community band together to support one another.
What I love about Meadville is its scale, I think. It was really easy for me to meet people here and get involved and start to feel like I was making a difference.
The small town mentality isn't always seen as a positive thing. Small town mentalities deal with a lot of racism.
We live in a conservative county and we are more liberal in our direction, which probably beats living in a totally liberal community. I've been in those communities, and I think I prefer to be in the fray, if you would have that.
So Meadville to me is both mostly good, a little bit of uncertainty. I came back to Meadville because it was my safe space. I was born here, I have some family members here, and I felt like coming here I would be okay.
Here we used to be known as Tool City, USA, and the publicity might still say that, but the community doesn't really show that very much. The industry's dipped a lot in the past 30 years, and there hasn't been much to really make that back.
When I grew up, my parents both worked for the railroad, and so in the mid-'80s, which was when I was just entering the high school, was when that went downhill. And so both my parents lost their jobs when I was in high school.
So one of the things that becomes clear when you're knocking on doors is that people are living in a very economically brutal circumstances in the city. They're struggling to pay their bills, and it's been going on that way for quite some time. Meadville used to be a bustling industrial city. There were a few major industries that were here involving manufacturing. But then, like a lot of other cities in the area, a lot of other Rust Belt cities, those companies left in search of cheaper labor and cheaper production, which left the city high and dry, and the consequences, we're still sort of dealing with the fallout. Right now I know that the poverty rate in Meadville is about 25%, which is well above the national average, I believe, is around 13%, and the median income in Meadville is about $33,000, and just to give you another comparison there, the national median income is about $61,000. So, you know, we're making about half as much as people are nationally. We're a poor city. It's a poor city.
So Meadville is a third-class city. That's a state of Pennsylvania designation based on population under 250,000. And it also limits the kind of governance structure that you can have, and I think Meadville has chosen the one that has the mayor, city manager, and city council model.
We're like a lot of cities in Pennsylvania that rely primarily on property taxes to fund city services. One of the problems for the city when it comes to property taxes is that we have a large number of properties that are actually tax exempt. I think it's something like 45% of the city. This would include nonprofits, it would include churches, it would also include some of the richest institutions in the city. There's a college, there's a hospital, there's a very wealthy retirement community. None of them pay property taxes. So effectively what we have is a city that's reliant on property taxes, but half of the city and the major institutions don't pay property taxes. So that leaves us in sort of dire straits.
The sad part is so many homes, especially in my area of Meadville down in 5th Ward, they're barely livable, and they get condemned one by one as time goes on. I work with a community program, and one of our community members was living in a dilapidated house. They had what some would term as a slumlord. She was on a strict, tight, small budget. So she didn't have the luxury to go out and get one of these nice apartments or homes. She can't go out and buy a house because your wages compared to what you need to pay to live, they don't go together well. So I find that to be one of our greatest hardships is fair housing, fair pay, and the sense of the people in power not always having the actual citizens' backs.
And one of the main things that I've noticed is that there are embedded special interests in city council. City council has traditionally been represented by landlords either directly or they work for rental companies. I have always seen that as a conflict of interest. These are city council are supposed to be stewards of us, the community.
I didn't think things got done. It seemed like the homes were neglected, rental properties, laws weren't enforced, the codes weren't enforced. I just felt like it was more of a clique.
There's definitely a small group of well-to-do, well-connected, long-term people who kind of run things, and they expect to run things.
So, you know, lots of people have been doing stuff for a long time in Meadville, but kind of thinking explicitly about like running for a local office was something that like a lot of us hadn't done. So we kind of got together at a local restaurant, just kind of sat down and started thinking about like what are some of our like shared values and how can we use those to maybe like run for some local office, particularly city council, because that's kind of where we were getting stopped.
There were events every month. It felt like there was just so much going on, and that was all just resident organized. Yeah, a lot of times we just ran into like small and big barriers from city council saying like that's not possible, or there's some arbitrary rule against that.
Government understood, like, wait a minute, you're asking too many things now. We don't do that as a city government. We just, kind of regulate what you're doing, but why can't we do it? And I think that's what happened. Why can't we?
You can do things politically in a smaller town that you can't do in a bigger city just because, it's easier to know all the players. The numbers are not as daunting. If you get people out to vote, if you put the argument out there in the public space, you can get things done.
So the first step was really recruiting good candidates. We didn't want just anyone. We kind of wanted people who shared really our values and who also maybe didn't feel like it was all about them. So because we didn't want it to be about the candidate, we wanted it to be about kind of these shared ideas and getting new people and new energy into office.
I've known Autumn for some years now, kind of in passing. We both ride bikes, and we would, shoot the stuff every so often. I knew them, very nice people, and Larry, as a matter of fact, was a neighbor of mine for years, and great dude. He's very, very nice, always thoughtful, and his granddaughter would play with my son all the time. And when the campaign started, I didn't really know, because I'm not a recluse, but I just didn't hear, didn't know, and I ran into Larry and Autumn. I was just walking home from work, and they're on the other side of the street. We all said hello, and I recognized Larry, and I recognized Autumn. We're talking like, how funny is it that we're just here? But it wasn't funny. They're out knocking on doors, and I learned that, and it just was like blew my mind. That I don't know. Elected office is kind of like above me, so to speak. You know what I mean? And just I don't want to say regular people, because they're very extraordinary people, and we have a lot of them in our community, that they're making the effort to go out and do it.
I remember when I first met Autumn, and we were actually involved in a play together. And I kind of recognized her, but we were kind of sitting there in the very first rehearsal, and I'm the kind of person who sort of sits on the sidelines and is a quieter person, but she turned to me and she was like, "Hello, I'm Autumn." And to me that said, she is a leader. She is the person who wants to introduce herself to people. And when I met Larry, it was the exact same deal. They were so open and friendly and excited to get out and talk to people that they had never met.
They're incredibly warm and earnest people. And I think when, they're showing up on your doorstep and asking to hear about your concerns, I think it comes across really genuine, right? And so part of it is about selecting good candidates, right, who can convey that. And I think they are certainly two of those people. In fact, I remember various instances throughout the campaign where Larry McKnight was sort of the non-voter whisperer, where he persuaded someone who was totally turned off to politics to think about getting involved, just because of his sort of manner and openness and willingness to talk about what good government could potentially do.
When I go to the parks, growing up here, we had a lot of parks, and we would go to each park for different events, volleyball, basketball, and it was nice to see all the parks evenly equipped and with a lot of counselors there and programs. Now you go to certain parks, they lack equipment, there's no counselors, no water, no bathrooms. You go to other areas of the town and it's the complete opposite. I was told once, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Well, I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution.
So I would describe Larry as a community icon, really. I lived in Meadville all his life. He's someone that everyone around here knows, and many people respect and admire.
Larry, it's so interesting. I didn't know of Larry until I became involved in this campaign. However, once I did and started talking to people, I was amazed at everyone who knew Larry. They either went to school with him, their kids were on the bus with him. Just my neighbors across the street, they come and they swim, and they found out that Larry was running because he saw the sign. They knew that I knew Larry, and they said, oh, he's our bus driver. He takes us out to Guy's Mills every day. And they just loved him. Then my neighbor on the other side of the street, they knew Larry from church. It was just like every door I'd knock on, oh yeah, I know Larry.
There's only been one other African American man that served on city council here in Meadville in 200 and something years. That was pretty exciting, and I felt like that was a part of making history, as well as like supporting someone in making history who I thought would do a really great job.
I'll never forget right at the end of the debate when the opponents tried to red bait them and accuse them of being communists and that they would somehow, bring the People's Republic of Meadville into being.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. Every promise, every program, every initiative has a cost, and somebody has to pay that price. Margaret Thatcher once observed that the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money, and then your own money is at stake.
Larry just went off script and spoke from the heart about who he was.
That was marvelous.
His roots in this community.
We need to try something different. That's the bottom line. And I grew up, I was born and raised here. I love this town. I'm passionate, just as passionate as the rest of you about this town. But I know what has been going on here. I know what can go on again. We had park programs. We had different programs. We had the Unity Center. We had college students that, and still are willing to come and work in our town with our kids. City Council has to reach out and say, hey, let's work together. It can be done.
I want to be on City Council because I think that it is City Council's job to make it easier for people to get involved, to have a hand in the decisions that are made that impact them. I think that Larry and I can kind of hold the door open for folks to be able to get involved, to make decisions, to shape things that affect us all. I feel ready to do that. I feel well positioned to do that. I think Larry is too, and I'm just excited about this opportunity.
We started thinking about running people for council. It wasn't like we had candidates ahead of time. We kind of had the platform first, and then we were thinking about the people that would best represent us. And Autumn was an obvious choice. She's been involved in everything that I can think of. She's kind of my go-to person if I have a question about something related to Meadville or how to do something. She always comes up with really creative solutions.
Town people can get the wrong idea about the population of the college that's here because we don't interact with them as much as we could. And I know that some people didn't really like Autumn being from the college and doing things and thinking that we were kind of a charity case to her. Not that she wanted to help us because that was in her heart, but she wanted to help us because she thought we weren't good enough. And I think that Autumn proved to myself as well as a lot of others that she wanted to help us because that's what her heart wanted, not because it looked good or not because she felt bad, because she loves Meadville and she wanted to make it a better place like so many people around her.
So the reason I think Autumn is so involved and knows so many people and is so well connected is she'll just show up for people. If someone's talking about something went wrong or they want to do something, she'll connect them with the right people. She'll kind of walk them through the steps to, approach city council or to, do whatever needs to happen. And in the process builds relationships too. It's not just like, get it done. She's building relationships with those people.
I had an incident with city council. I had to go there to see if we could stop them paving a road that I've spent my whole life growing up on.
I kind of knew the moment we walked in there that it was a lost cause. Just kind of the looks on people's faces as I talked. You could see that there was some compassion for the situation, but there really wasn't any kind of institutionalized compassion. There was no kind of sense that we could do something. But one of the things that I really took away from that was that Autumn showed up to sit with us and sat behind us. And there was one point during when we were hearing the verdict that I looked over at Eli and I really wondered if he was going to be able to keep it together. And at that moment, Autumn kind of tapped him on the shoulder and they both started looking at her phone about something. She had showed Eli some pictures of some brick pavers, kind of like false bricks that you could lay into the pavement. And Eli was really excited about that. And when we walked home, we talked a little bit about it was kind of too late for his street, but getting involved in the Larry and Autumn campaign is a way for us to kind of look at other situations like that, where maybe the city isn't communicating with residents well enough, or maybe the city isn't being creative enough. And are there ways that we can do things that don't cost a lot more money, but just through some thoughtful conversations with residents, we can have better solutions that work for everybody.
I'm voting because my voice matters. I'm voting because I want this community to be a place for everyone.
You should vote because Meadville is my future.
I'm voting because Meadville is my home. Register to vote by October 7th. Vote for Meadville! Vote for Larry and Autumn!
And don't forget to register!
So one of the things we tried to do with the campaign, which a lot of people thought was unusual, and I suppose it was we ran two people together. We decided to run a cooperative campaign. We didn't want to make this about individuals competing with each other. The idea was basically, let's work together. And if we stand for the same things, this won't be about one person, this will be about something bigger.
So beyond kind of like the ideological reason that cooperative campaigns might be great, it's also kind of a practical thing, right? So if you're going to a door, you say, I'm working with the Larry and Autumn campaign, they don't know Autumn, but they know Larry. You're kind of splitting your odds there, hoping that through these two people, the door you're knocking on, they'll know one of the people. Maybe they went to high school with Larry, maybe their kids rode the bus with Larry, maybe they worked with Autumn in like getting a small business loan or like heard about her work. So it's kind of like this exciting way to, I think, like bridge different communities and just kind of like play the odds.
A lot of people involved with the campaign were people who are still college students or recent college graduates or college professors or people somehow connected to that world. But there were also a lot of people that were connected to Larry who were very much working class people. And so this shows the ways in which people who might come from different class backgrounds, different experiences in life can come together, find some shared values, find some shared goals, and really begin to build a coalition that can last.
Our campaign included so many people. So for me, I want to say the one thing that wasn't projected through the campaign intentionally, but did, was the solidarity amongst every difference. For me, that was important. And even though it wasn't spoken, it was known.
So we wanted people who were like willing to run on, again, these kind of shared issues that were hyper-local and that we knew a majority of the town who wasn't maybe the kind of powerful power players would resonate with and feel like they could identify with and want to fight for.
Larry and I are running a cooperative campaign that's committed to addressing the issues that Meadville faces, a campaign committed to a transparent and participatory local government, to quality, affordable housing, and to an investment in our public spaces and resources.
So I think that just like what's happening sort of across the United States, where we do have an increasingly nationalized politics, and people are really wedded to national level issues, and that's how they're thinking about what politics is. It's also at times why they're really turned off by politics. I think one of the things that, from my perspective, seemed to work really well in this campaign was the focus on local issues, and the focus on local issues that we don't really hear about at the national level.
What do you think is the most pressing issue facing the Meadville community? Go.
I think one of the most pressing things is public spaces, availability, better public places, and activities for our children. We need to make sure that our children have activities, but they're safe activities, and a place that they can go and enjoy themselves.
Oh no, that was close enough. How will you make government more accessible to Meadville citizens?
Yeah, I think we need a policy, a set procedure for how we get folks involved in boards, authorities, and commissions that administer our public resources. I think we need an application process where all people can apply, and that way we can increase the pool of folks that are making decisions for our town. I agree. Public meetings, public forums, and making them fun and inviting and not so stuffy.
And for me, some of the most interesting and exciting moments I had knocking on doors were talking to people that were, initially skeptical or cynical about some stranger coming up to them and handing them some campaign literature. But it soon became clear after we started to talk about the principles of the campaign and why they were running together that a lot of people sort of opened up. I particularly enjoyed conversations with folks who would start off by saying, what party are they from? And usually they were Republicans who would ask that question. And as soon as you said they were running as Democrats, they seemed to want to shut down. But then the trick was just to say, well, here's what the issues are. Here's what they're running on. They believe in safe and affordable housing. We think this is a bipartisan issue, that, this is not a Republican or a Democrat problem. This is a problem for lower income people. And so once you started to actually talk about the issues, people sort of opened up, because I think one of the values of the campaign, one of the things that made it enjoyable was that it was, and this is probably a virtue, it was disconnected from the national discussion.
One of the things that the campaign was really able to accomplish was a dramatic increase in how many people turned out and voted. So if you look at the 2019 election as compared to the 2017 election, where we also had an election for 2 city council members, plus in 2017 a mayoral election, which should be more high profile, right? We actually increased the votes in total by somewhere around 1,000 votes, which for a small community like this is pretty impressive. And if you look sort of precinct by precinct, some of those places where they were really surprised to see folks showing up in their neighborhood, they doubled their vote totals from the previous election.
The campaign was built on the work of My Meadville, which was a community research project that eventually led to a community action plan. The core values of My Meadville were to involve everyone, play the long game, and focus on what matters. And I think that those aspects were really, really present in the campaign as well. We got most of the data from interviews, group interviews, story circles, as well as going to big events and just hearing about what people loved about Meadville, what they wanted to see for the future of Meadville, why they're here. And really it was interacting with everybody who lived, worked, played, or prayed in Meadville. So it was trying to touch on everybody.
Because there is definitely a divide in Meadville for who you see come out to meetings. I mean, I'm not afraid to attend meetings, but I know I see the same, when I do, I see the same people every time. So there are certainly everyday Meadville folks that don't feel welcome at some of these meetings, these formal meetings.
The Larry and Autumn campaign really brought a lot of people together. And what I didn't see previously with City Council was gatherings of a lot of people just to hear their opinions and their struggles.
It's just hard to do, you know. And I'm proud of you guys to take this initiative, but I just don't see how you're going to make much change.
I'm just really upset at the fact that we're looking at what we used to do and saying what we can't do. We're not about that. We're saying this is what we can do with support and input from everybody.
We also participated at the Pizza Policy Forum, and I got to be a co-moderator of a group that was focused on housing. And it was actually kind of really interesting because we had a real diversity of perspective at our table, I think. We did have some tenants. We also had some people who were sort of lawyers and could offer a certain kind of expertise. And it was interesting to have a conversation where people from like really different backgrounds were coming together to talk about the potential policy.
Yeah, I was also at the same panel on housing issues, and the issue that we were discussing was the creation of a rental registry where landlords would have to register their properties and then there would be city inspections to make sure those properties were up to code. The policy itself seems so straightforward, so common sense, so oriented to a common good, and yet the challenges of making that policy work, both in terms of getting a policy enacted and making sure that the people who would benefit from those policies aren't caught in the crosshairs, so to speak, becomes a really difficult challenge. But people were talking about that challenge.
You know, we had already talked to a lot of people doing a lot of great community work, but we wanted to knock on every door for the campaign. So we wanted to talk to Republicans, Democrats, independents, people who have never registered before, and just kind of try to engage them in this process.
When we started the campaign, it became clear sort of quickly that we didn't really know what we were doing. And thankfully, somebody reached out to us, somebody who had worked with the Justice Democrats and was actually living in California, but whose parents were living here in Meadville. She actually reached out to us on the basis of our Facebook page. And she pointed us in the right direction. She basically said, okay, so what's your plan to win this? And we kind of said to ourselves, plan to win, we're just going to win.
And she kind of told us, you know, it's not arbitrary. There's like a strategy and you can count your votes and know if you're going to win, basically.
She gave us an idea, which in retrospect seems very obvious, but that's that you need to count your votes. You need to find out how many votes is it going to take to win the election, and then you go out and you ask people, will you vote for Larry and Autumn? And you try to hit your vote count. You try to hit what we were calling our yes IDs. Yes, I will vote for you. Yes, I will vote for Larry and Autumn.
Like, we have to do it. It's not someone else out there who's going to just change, you know, the system or change our government. It's like literally us that has to do it. And I think our system of campaigning with like counting each individual vote just really represents that. It's like, yeah, we have to do it.
Essentially, we door knocked for 6 months leading up to the November election. And we went out on average twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays, every week for 6 months leading up to the campaign. And during that time, talked to a lot of people. And I think that was a core part of what Larry and Autumn were running on. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about their own ideas. It was about listening to other people.
People were impressed to see folks at their door. The very first door that we got an answer on that I ever canvassed for this campaign, one of the things they talked a lot about at the doorstep was the fact that not just them, but their neighborhood specifically didn't see city council candidates.
I was canvassing with Autumn, and we were just knocking on doors, and this really sweet older woman asked us to come into her apartment. And it was just Autumn and I and this woman who we had never met sitting in her apartment. That really stayed with me, partially because of the novelty of being in that situation, but partially just because I think it really, hearing her specific story about her life in Meadville, her generational life in Meadville, just, it showed me the importance of what we were doing by making her heard, by hearing her story. And it showed me that Larry and Autumn's campaign wasn't about, oh, new ideas and new energy that are totally foreign to this place. It was, this is inherently Meadville.
The campaign made room for a lot of people to get involved. I thought that, similar to my Meadville, a lot of people felt like they actually had a voice that mattered, and that even the smallest hour that they can give to volunteering would actually make a difference.
I'd always gotten the impression from when I had kind of been interested in doing things with the city that the city government or involvement in city government wasn't a thing that normal people did. And I think I felt like being even involved in a campaign was something for other people. And Larry and Autumn made it really clear to me, both of them, that their campaign was about people that wanted to help and wanted to look out for what the city could be. And it could be, their campaign could be for anybody if they wanted to participate, if they wanted to be a part of something greater than themselves. And that, to me, opened my eyes to the fact that really anyone can be involved. Anyone can be involved in politics. Anyone can be involved in making their community a better place.
The folks who are organizing the campaign, the folks who I would, the candidates themselves and the folks who I would consider to be the lead organizers, had a really strong commitment to participatory democracy, finding a way for people to be involved in a variety of different ways at a variety of different levels, and then providing really clear instruction for folks who are doing different aspects of the campaign. So, for instance, I was a door canvasser, right? I could walk in on any given day and know what my marching orders were.
I am an incredibly shy person, and door knocking, canvassing is like my worst nightmare. And I still felt like there were opportunities available for people like me in the campaign.
So I stayed in the background, though. I did things like putting address labels on envelopes and just going to different meetings and groups and making myself available whenever I could.
I was lucky enough to be asked to do the artwork for the Larry and Autumn campaign. I started thinking, they want this to be a very different campaign. And the piece actually began as sort of an illustration for some of their handouts. And then it kind of captured that essence of their campaign, that they're very different. They have that sense of community. They want it to be colorful and illustrative and fun and energetic, exciting. And so they decided to sort of use that as their piece for advertising themselves, for promoting their campaign. And it was so exciting to be able to share something that I can do, especially for the campaign.
I own Evolution Printing Systems, and we printed all of the yard signs and the t-shirts for the Larry and Autumn campaign. I take a lot of pride in seeing people wearing things that I had a part in making. So being able to be involved in that was actually fantastic.
I own Foundry Cowork, which is a shared workspace. It has a large open space and it's all membership based, and my purpose of creating it was to create an intentional community where people can work together and collaborate. So it seemed kind of perfect to kind of turn that into the hub for our Monday night work sessions. Our Monday night work sessions were usually from around 6 to 8 or 9 p.m. and it was a space for people to come together. We would usually have a short agenda of some things that we need to make decisions together on, creating timelines, work plans, and also having some smaller teams working on some specific action items.
Yeah, so the Monday night working sessions were a pretty cool experience to meet a lot of new people for me. And at first I only went with my friend who introduced me to coming to them, and then I remember actually going to them like by myself for the first time and kind of walking in there and saying hi to people who I started to know and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a really cool experience to not only meet new people, but meet people who were like-minded and were working towards the same things that I wanted to work towards.
You know, and I really did enjoy the Monday night. I felt it was an intellectual activity, which I do enjoy intellectual activities, and to show up at the Foundry and think was joyful to me. That was.
The thing I remember most is feeling a lot of power in like a tangible way that I don't think I've ever felt before doing community work.
One of my favorite parts about working with the campaign was that I think that we made it really fun.
I think that my favorite moment was on the election day, the day of the general election. I was standing out on the corner, and we were holding Larry and Autumn signs, and there were people dressed up as T-Rexes, the Democrisaurus Rex, and we were just like standing out there all day, hanging out, trying to get people to the polls.
I was one of the people in the inflatable Democrisaurus Rex costume. I just thought people were actually paying attention, people were excited about it, people were laughing about it. I feel like so many times people feel very disheartened and discouraged about the political process in general, and so this was just a really way to keep positive and kind of neutral at the same time.
I love the idea that like the people standing in a T-Rex costume on the corner, getting people to honk, like also won. They weren't just like, you know, our mayor loves to say, make Meadville fun again. And I feel like we showed him like, you can do that and be serious about changing people's lives.
I think the whole campaign spirit for me can be encapsulated in one day, one event. That'd be the Halloween parade. Was what a spectacular day. Everything went wrong. Everything you could think of, everything you couldn't think of. Just, oh yeah, it was dumping rain. It was 40 degrees. We couldn't get anything to work. Had a whole plan for a float that could not do. Well, no, we pulled it off. No, we did pull it off. And when you see how many of us were there, 40-ish, 50, all through town, screaming, clapping, hooping and hollering, and just this, all of us together, that energy was something that I remember still to this day, and I draw on it. That's the whole thing. It was a group of people that otherwise may not have intermingled, that came together on a set of ideas and ideals for our community that we all agree on, and just exploded the whole town with it. It was amazing. It was one of my favorite things ever.
This was a campaign that was really self-consciously focused on the politics of the possible. What could be done in a community like this that hasn't been done before? And I think what Larry McKnight and Autumn Vogel demonstrated is that not only could you win, but you could win big if you put in the work.
I think it was exciting to be involved in something that was so resoundingly successful. I mean, that was, I mean, I will never forget the moment when, I mean, we had it in the bag. I just didn't know we had it in the bag, and I was late to the party because I had other stuff to do on election day, and coming in and seeing that, you know, we had it.
When, you know, the votes had come in, and I cried at my home. I don't know, I didn't go to the big party because I guess I'm a loser, but I cried a lot on my own because it was just like, I'm getting like chills talking about it, but it was just such a beautiful thing, and to see that everyone's hard work paid off, and to see like change. These are two people that really care, and they want change. They want to work with us, with the people of Meadville, not against us, not for us, but with us. And that is what we've been missing here.
Okay, I am, like everybody else in this country, so tired of living divided. I am hoping that our town can get a bit of traction on harmony, Now that's a pretty big dream. That's a pretty big reach. But there's competition out there in the world. Competition is fine and good. There's good competition. There's ugly competition. I think our country is just full of such a angst. And it's right here. I'd love to see our city lead the way out of that.
And this is kind of like step one, really, that opened a lot of people's eyes, including my own. I might walk around town and look at somebody and judge them. Just walking by, not anything on looks or anything, just that we're in this community. And I think that's really important. Just judge them just because they're here. I don't do that anymore because I've met so many that I would never meet in my entire life. And I think it's changed the community as well because so many people now can see that we have this energy and we have this spirit.
We've had a natural point after the high of winning the election of kind of looking around and saying, how do we keep that momentum going? And you can't keep the momentum going from a landslide victory in November. But what you have to do is you need to package that up and keep it in your mind and keep being inspired by that, knowing that that can be recreated, that can be something that can become a local movement and can become something greater than any of the sum of its parts.
It's a really special time in Meadville right now. I don't know if other people can feel it, but I can feel it.
We see things getting better.
Larry and I are running together. We're running it together because it's not about us, right? It's about all of us in town. It's not about Larry, it's not about Autumn. It's about all of us in town who haven't had a seat at the table. It's about the folks that I've met through community organizing, that Larry has met through being a bus driver. It's about those hopes, those dreams, those concerns that people have. It's about creating a Meadville that we care about, that we love, that we're proud to call home.
I'm from my heart. I love this town.
We're asking for both of your votes.
In the future, people are going to start to understand that, you know what, I could run. Not only could I run, I can get support. Not only can I get support, but the problems that I have are problems for many of the people here. And that's a big deal, to know that you are not the one, but you're the many. And that's when change starts happening.
People that never spoke to one another previously are now connected and together, all because of the Larry and Autumn campaign. It put us on a train to solidarity in the community. And I hope that train ride continues to go and every stop more people jump on.
So yeah, one time I was out knocking on doors. I think it was probably my third or fourth time, so I was still pretty new, kind of getting used to the, little routine of it. But yeah, we were assigning different people areas, and I went off on my own. It was one of the first times as well that I didn't have like a partner to be knocking on doors with, and I was getting every house in the area. So yeah, I just saw the house on the list, and I went and knocked on it, and no one was home at first. And then John Battaglia pulled up in his truck that said Battaglia on it. And at that point, I walked up to him and I asked him if he was interested in hearing about the local city council campaign and two candidates that were running, Larry and Autumn. And he asked me if I knew who he was. And I had to look at him and say no, and he said that he was the opposition candidate, actually.
Episode 12B. Trees that are voting for Larry and Autumn. Number 1, the lilac. Number 2, crabapple. Number 3, the cherry or perhaps peach. And now, Number 3, the Larch.
The Larch.
I've seen police officers go by on cars and bicycles. Why haven't I seen any go by on unicorns? Can you make them go by on unicorns?
I would love to try that.
Would you rather have to fight 10 zombie-sized chickens or 100 chicken-sized zombies?
I'd rather fight 100 chicken-sized zombies than any zombie-sized chicken.